Today on Newsgirls, the alt-right PBS rewrites history.
They're approved as an educational resource that can be shown to children in 9 states.
Social justice isn't justice. Are some cultures better than others? Trump gives away Ukraine.
Offered to buy $100 billion of American weapons for security guarantees.
Putin being asked if he will stop killing civilians and he just shrugged. And Hamilton's Christopher Jackson. Take us back 10 years to when the show opened.
We spent so much time together as a cast. Only a few other people in the world that had that experience.
Wanted to get into, and just like that, how were you approached? Hey everyone, welcome to Newsgirls.
I'm Wren.
And I'm Mabel.
Let's get into the stories. So you might have seen clips from PragerU, the conservative educational media organization, circulating on social media the past week. There's a lot of shocking ones out there, and that's because the White House just partnered with them on a children's series.
And they're approved as an educational resource that can be shown to children in classrooms in 9 states. One of their most viral clips is of Christopher Columbus speaking to 2 kids named Leo and Layla about slavery, and let's just take a look.
Slavery is as old as time and has taken place in every corner of the world, even amongst the people I just left. Being taken as a slave is better than being killed, no? Before you judge, you must ask yourself, what did the culture and society of the time treat as no big deal?
And throughout the video, Christopher Columbus is basically painting these natives as like evil cannibals and kind of justifying his own actions, partly because he says he was spreading the teachings of Jesus Christ.
And PragerU videos have amassed more than 7 billion overall views. So another example is this one where civil rights leader Booker T. Washington has this heavy-handed message for the kids.
We're really sorry that you have to deal with segregation and racism.
Your sympathy is nice, Layla, but know that you have nothing to be sorry about. You and Leo have done nothing wrong and have indeed been quite respectful. Future generations are never responsible for the sins of the past.
Okay, I'll keep doing my best to treat everyone well and won't feel guilty about historical stuff.
Good.
These are just such weird viewpoints to be teaching kids in school. It's literally giving these like far-right takes about American history as fact. The series unfortunately continues with Leo and Layla speaking to abolitionist Frederick Douglass, where he low-key justifies slavery.
Children, our founding fathers knew that slavery was evil and wrong, and they knew that it would do terrible harm to the nation. They wanted it to end, but their first priority was getting all 13 colonies to unite as one country. The southern colonies were dependent on slave labor, and they wouldn't have joined a union that had banned it.
Are you okay with that?
I'm certainly not okay with slavery, but the founding fathers made a compromise to achieve something great, the making of the United States.
And this one's so disturbing because it's literally putting words in Frederick Douglass's mouth that he would never say. It's a perversion of history, and it's teaching kids a completely biased version of what actually happened and who these figures were.
No, it's true. It's literally warping these people that we actually learned about and their thoughts to become like mouthpieces for some conservative agenda. And a lot of these videos actually seem to defend America's problematic past, especially when it comes to race and slavery. So there's this one video that really emphasizes how white people were the first to formally end slavery. Like, they're the ones who took the slave.
Yeah, I don't know what's crazier, that quote or the fact that Leo, the boy from the series, has blue hair after all the blue-haired liberal cat lady jokes.
And so in case you're all wondering, no, PragerU is not an accredited university. It surprisingly has Hollywood roots. It was founded in 2009 by conservative talk show host Dennis Prager and a screenwriter, Alan Estrin. And its mission is to, quote, promote American values through the creative use of digital media, technology, and edutainment.
And oh boy, is Dennis Prager a controversial figure. So he's a suspected white supremacist who says he's in the mind-changing business and would like to see the American education system resemble how it operated generations ago, like in the 1930s, except minus the bad stuff. He also thinks it's, quote, idiotic that the left has made it impossible to say the N-word.
Because the left has made it impossible to say the N-word any longer. That's disgusting. It's a farce. It's the only word that you can't say in the English language.
I don't get why he's fighting so hard to say the N-word, but that's Dennis Prager for you. And like we said, PragerU's content is approved to be taught in schools in Alaska, Idaho, Montana, Arizona, Texas, Oklahoma, Louisiana, Florida, South Carolina, and New Hampshire.
Yeah, so they develop a different curriculum basically with the state's superintendent. So in Idaho, they're providing K-12 Holocaust education resources. In South Carolina, they're creating engaging videos, worksheets, lesson plans, and books that celebrate America's rich history. And in Louisiana, they're curating content for Freedom Week, which happens every September, apparently.
They also worked with the Oklahoma superintendent, who you might remember as the guy who added the Bible to the state's school curriculum. He said, quote, "There's no better example of a curriculum that rips the soul out of the liberal takeover of our schools than providing PragerU to every Oklahoma student."
Since when is ripping the soul out of the liberals vital to a child's education? But if you do agree with that, there is a petition you can sign on their website to get PragerU into more schools. And according to their co-founder, PragerU will be more important than Harvard in 10 years or less, and they claim 70% of minds are changed on at least one topic after watching their videos.
Well, they clearly think very highly of their work. And as we looked into this, we were wondering, how did PragerU get their content into schools? Because adding materials to like public school curriculums is notoriously difficult, but I guess it turns out that this organization has some insane connections. So NBC obtained records showing that it cozied up to state politicians and courted elected officials to get this done, which experts say is alarming and raises red flags about our education system.
And the notable people that they've had in their videos is actually crazy. Senator Ted Cruz, Nikki Haley, Supreme Court Justice Clarence Thomas, Jordan Peterson, and Prime Minister of Hungary, Viktor Orban.
Literally, why is an authoritarian European leader on their homepage?
And then, of course, they outsourced to classic Republican talking heads, Charlie Kirk, Tucker Carlson, Ben Shapiro, and Candace Owens.
And I guess all this star-studded talent got people flocking to the site because last year they had 21 million people visit it. And of course, their socials and YouTube have millions of followers.
So let's look at some more of their content, or what they call medicine for the mind. So their most famous video series is called 5-Minute Videos. And these are just some of the titles. DEI Must DIE. You get like die. Social justice isn't justice. Are some cultures better than others? Make men masculine again. Income inequality is good, and what radical Islam and the woke have in common.
Oh my god, I'm looking through their X and they just posted a video called Is Adolf Hitler far right or far left? Like they're debating that.
What? I didn't even realize that was a question.
And don't worry, they have long form content too, like a documentary called D-Trans, The Dangers of Gender Affirming Care. And clearly this is a topic they're passionate about. YouTube has previously removed 2 of their anti-trans videos for violating its hate speech policy.
They also have tons of videos denying climate change and saying that the science isn't settled on it, and of course promoting fossil fuels. Quote, "Climate is a very convenient way for governments and institutions to get involved in nearly every aspect of a citizen's life. The science does not support that fear. That fear is irrational."
And for superfans, PragerU has an online store where you can buy water bottles and sweats that say PragerU, t-shirts that of course say make education great again, and even hats that say faith over fear.
Yeah, a lot of what they do and say is rooted in the Bible. In their mission statement, they mention how America was founded on Judeo-Christian values like 5 times. And they call PragerU the modern day Dead Sea Scrolls. Their yearly report even has a Bible verse on it. "These are the things which you shall do. Speak the truth to one another. Judge with truth and judgment. For peace at your gates." Zechariah 8:16.
They even have a video called Can We Learn About Economics from the Bible? And many of their biggest donors are these really big Christian foundations, which is interesting since Dennis Prager is actually Jewish. And even though PragerU is a nonprofit, it's raking in huge checks. So from 2018 to 2022, PragerU has made $200 million.
Well, in a surprise to no one, PragerU gets a ton of backlash. Civil rights groups like the Southern Poverty Law Center and the Human Rights Campaign have described their content as propaganda and accused them of whitewashing history, minimizing racism, and presenting cherry-picked facts.
And parents, even in these conservative states, have been pushing back. So progressive Florida activists circulated like a form where parents can opt their children out of these lessons. And then parents in New Hampshire held demonstrations against PragerU before the state board approved the partnership.
Well, speaking of partnership, last month the White House launched a new Founders Museum in the building. I did not hear about that, but I guess the debut exhibit is a video series by PragerU. It's called The Road to Liberty.
And these videos they made with the White House are so creepy. They use AI to like animate the paintings of the founding fathers to make like their mouths move and say things.
Facts are stubborn things. In other words, friend, facts do not care about our feelings.
Like there's this one of John Adams saying facts don't care about your feelings, which is Ben Shapiro's famous line.
Again, with putting words in their mouth that they would never say.
And honestly, to me, it's just so weird that kids will be taught a different version of US history based on what state they live in. Like states already function so differently from each other on these huge issues. You would think that if the country wants to remain united at all, there has to be some shared basic like foundational values.
And obviously PragerU's content and just their reach, like being in schools, is disturbing enough. But with the backdrop of Trump defunding PBS, it kind of adds another layer. Like PBS Kids was home to all of our favorite educational shows, Between the Lions, Mr. Rogers, Sesame Street, Liberty's Kids, which is a pretty direct comp. So getting rid of those while partnering with PragerU seems very pointed.
No, definitely. Like Trump just last week clawed back $1.1 billion in public broadcasting funds, which affects PBS and also NPR. And that's in line with all his recent lawsuits against like major broadcasting networks, because this shows that he's essentially punishing stations and outlets for having what he calls a liberal bias while promoting conservative messaging.
I mean, it doesn't get more conservative than PragerU. Senator Ed Markey said it's all a part of a plan to intimidate and control the media and how they cover Trump's presidency.
So this past week has felt like a whirlwind as President Trump has been trying to wrap up this 3.5-year war between Russia and Ukraine. And even though these meetings haven't resulted in like a ceasefire or peace deal yet, a lot has gone down and things seem to be moving pretty quickly in the world of foreign policy.
So today, Mabel and I thought we would catch you up on everything that's happened in the past week with the Putin meeting in Alaska and then the Zelenskyy meeting and the world leaders at the White House.
So Putin and Trump met in Alaska last week and nothing really big happened in the meeting. As I'm sure you saw, Putin was welcomed to Alaska like on a red carpet.
Yes, I saw the video of U.S. soldiers literally on their hands and knees rolling out the red carpet for Putin, who people are quick to point out is a war criminal. He's a dictator. He's a murderer, but he's getting this red carpet.
And apparently the International Criminal Court has like an arrest warrant out for him. So he obviously hasn't been traveling a lot recently, but he got quite a warm welcome to Alaska.
Nice.
And it turns out that this is the first face-to-face meeting between the two since Russia invaded. So it was a pretty big deal. And Trump kept the expectations kind of low for everyone, but he said, quote, "I won't be happy if I walk away without some form of a ceasefire."
Oops, well, that was a fail. That's weird because Monday at his meeting with Zelenskyy and the world leaders, he was saying maybe a ceasefire isn't necessary. We could just like jump to a peace plan. And the world leaders were like, what are you talking about? You're supposed to have good faith negotiations while the killing is continuing. So people are saying Trump has kind of been swayed maybe to talk more like Putin. But speaking of the killing, of course, you saw the video of Putin being asked if he will stop killing civilians, and he just shrugged, and Trump was just there smiling.
That was literally horrific. And I guess this meeting is largely being considered kind of a flop because they're saying Putin doesn't have much incentive to cave since the battle has kind of been turning in Russia's favor recently. The Russian army has made more gains over the last week than it has in months, while Ukraine is really struggling with manpower. And Putin reportedly told Trump that he would sign up to a ceasefire and freeze the current battle line in Zaporizhia and Kherson if Ukrainian forces withdrew from the entire Donbas region.
But that's crazy because right now Russia controls almost 20% of Ukrainian territory. So that'd be like handing over 1/5 of the country. It's obvious that why Ukraine has been so against any deal like that.
Yeah, I mean, they're saying that it's a proposal Zelenskyy is definitely going to reject, and Putin knows it. It's just basically like a pointless thing to even suggest. And that was kind of like the major thing that was even discussed. It ended quicker than expected. They took no questions from reporters. Putin actually suggested that the two leaders next meet in Moscow. And I guess the last time, wait, Wren, this is so crazy, a US president visited Russia was Obama in 2013 for the G20, which is also the last time Trump was there for a Miss Universe pageant. And he actually posted this. Do you think Putin will be going to the Miss Universe pageant in November in Moscow? If so, will he become my new best friend?
Manifestation. Yeah, it seems like his meeting with Zelenskyy and the world leaders definitely got into the more like tangible details of peace deal, if it's even possible. So first, Trump met with Zelenskyy in the Oval Office just one-on-one, and then later had a multilateral with all of the world leaders. There were 7 there. Even just all of them showing up was a remarkable show of unity because these are people on very different sides of the ideological spectrum. There was a weird mood going into this meeting because just hours beforehand, Russia killed at least 14 people in Ukraine. There are 3 big components that everyone was looking for movement on. One was security guarantees, actually having troops in Ukraine from NATO countries or from the US to help guarantee there's peace with Russia. Trump indicated it would be Article 5 style. So Article 5 is like the NATO collective defense. If one's attacked, they're all attacked. So they all come to each other's aid. But then the next day, Trump ruled out sending US troops. So that would mean other NATO countries would have to be the ones responsible for that.
Ukraine offered to buy $100 billion of American weapons financed by Europe for security guarantees. So clearly Zelenskyy really does want some kind of like American presence, I guess, there. And it looks like there's 3 ways that a presence would work. One would be a full-blown peacekeeping force, which would be armed, and that would supplement the Ukrainian military. The idea would be to deter Russia, but it would be hard to imagine them agreeing to something like that. So then the second option would be like a smaller force. And then the third option would be an observer force, which would be like a small few hundred troops that would basically just be there to watch if there's any military action and use like satellites to monitor if Russia is like stepping out of line.
So the second big point that everyone was looking for was ceding territory. And allegedly it wasn't even discussed on Monday. So are these discussions really actually getting somewhere if you're not even covering one of the biggest sticking points? And then the third big thing is, will Putin and Zelenskyy meet? Originally on Monday, the Kremlin said Putin agreed to a meeting, but then Tuesday, they already walked it back, and the Kremlin is being very non-committal. Zelenskyy said he's open to having a bilateral first and then a trilateral with Trump joining after, and he doesn't want to put any conditions on it because then he's afraid if he starts having stipulations, then Putin's going to have all these stipulations and it's never going to happen. But there are no details on it yet. Trump says it's like very early stages, but that it is set up. So now we just like wait and see what happens.
So now that we got all the like catch up strategy, what might happen with Ukraine and Russia out of the way, a lot of weird stuff kind of went down at these meetings.
Yes, I think we need to start with the suitcase.
Yeah, this is actually insane. So like reports have shown that Putin's bodyguards were holding like a mysterious briefcase during the summit, and people think they know what it is because a report published by 2 investigative journalists like a couple years ago found that Putin's Federal Protection Service are responsible for collecting his bodily waste on foreign trips, packaging it in a suitcase, and then bringing it back to Russia.
That is so disgusting. And why? Literally why?
Because he's scared that like foreign like nationals or people might get a hold of his like feces basically and find out like health details and information about him, and he's just so like
he's like paranoid.
Yeah, he's paranoid because obviously you remember there's all these like rumors about Putin's health and what's wrong with him, and so he seems to be very airtight. There's like rumors that he flies around with like a porta potty, and so it's called the poop suitcase, and it was spotted on this trip.
No. It is so crazy that that is happening, yet Zelenskyy wearing a suit or not gets top billing. Every media organization was like, will he wear a suit? Will he not wear a suit? He was photographed before in another meeting with like Trump's advisors wearing just a black t-shirt. So for a while we were like, oh no, it's going to happen again. Not a repeat of last time he was in the Oval Office. But then he rolled up to the White House and he was wearing an all black suit. I guess it's a suit he's worn. He wore it to Pope Francis's funeral. It's all black, black tie, black shirt, black jacket. And Trump complimented him and said, oh, you look so great. And did you see the exchange between Zelenskyy and Marjorie Taylor Greene's boyfriend, journalist?
No.
I guess he's a journalist. He was, I guess, the one really heckling Zelenskyy last time, like, why aren't you wearing a suit? And so this time he's like trying to like kiss ass, and he's like, Zelenskyy, you look so good in that suit. And Zelenskyy like had the best clapback. He was like, you know what? I think you're wearing the same suit that you were last time. And he's like, I changed, you didn't change.
The fact that this is what people are focusing on, like in the most like urgent situation, like is so like stupid.
And that's why I think Zelenskyy just appeased Trump and wore a suit to try to minimize the conversation around what he's wearing.
So then bringing it back to Putin and what happened in Alaska, did you see that papers with U.S. State Department markings were found Friday morning before the meeting in like a hotel on the printer that had like potentially sensitive details about the meeting? So like the schedule, contact numbers of government officials. It was found by some random people that were staying at the hotel.
I mean, not that I expect a ton more from Trump's White House, but that is sad.
And I guess it was 8 pages long. And this is funny. The list provided like how to phonetically pronounce all the Russian men that were attending the meeting, including Putin. So it said Mr. President POO-TIHN, just in case.
It's just a funny callback to the briefcase. Also, how else would...
Oh, right.
Putin? Like, how else are you going to say it?
The schedule revealed that Trump was going to give Putin a ceremonial present, POTUS to President Putin, American bald eagle desk statue.
The war criminal part, the evil dictator part, is just not clocking. It's not clocking to Trump. Well, flipping back to another weird thing that happened on Monday with Zelenskyy in the Oval Office when they were taking questions after their meeting, Trump joked about not having an election in 2028. It was really eerie.
So you say during the war you can't have elections. So let me just say 3.5 years from now. So you mean if we happen to be in a war with somebody, No more elections. Oh, that's good. I wonder what the fake.
You like this idea?
Yeah, no, this is
No. Speaking of news.
He also showed Zelenskyy the merch for sale at the White House, and one of the things was a 2028 campaign hat.
Yeah, like in the days after Trump's meeting with Putin, he was randomly assaulting mail-in voting, and apparently that was inspired by Putin. So Trump told Fox's Sean Hannity that Putin told him, your election was rigged because you have mail-in voting. And then a few days later, Trump truth socialed about getting rid of it. So clearly he's very, like, impressionable. Like, to Putin, it's just really weird. Like, Trump said that he would start this process of getting rid of mail-in voting with an executive order, quote, that's being written right now by the best lawyers in the country to end mail-in ballots.
Mail-in ballots are decided by the state. The states get, like, each state gets to decide if they want to do that. So there's not a lot that he can even do. But it is alarming how influenceable he seems to be by Putin. He even left Monday's meeting early to go call Putin, and it lasted 40 minutes. And he just filled Putin in on everything that the world leaders and he were talking about. He said that there's a warmth between him and Putin that's really nice. He was actually caught on a hot mic saying that Putin wants to make a deal for him. Like, Putin's just obsessed with him and is like, I need to make Donald happy.
I think he wants to make a deal for me. You understand that? As crazy as it sounds.
Well, I have faith that there will be peace because Melania Trump personally wrote a letter to Putin saying that the war should end. So, like,
one of the best negotiators of our time. Mabel and I cannot believe we are about to introduce our guest on the show today. We are such huge fans. Not only was he the original George Washington in Hamilton on Broadway, he also played Herbert Wexley in And Just Like That, the Sex and the City spinoff, and he's back on Broadway right now as Davis in Hell's Kitchen. It is Christopher Jackson.
We can't believe that we got this interview with him, especially because it's Hamilton, so the 10-year anniversary of Hamilton, and because the And Just Like That season finale happened last week, so we can't wait to get all of his insights.
We know it's Hamilton, so can you take us back 10 years to when the show opened? Like, what do you remember from the early days? How excited were you to play this prolific figure?
First of all, great to be with you guys. It was exciting. Everything that generates from the world of Lynn and Tommy and me, and like, it's just, we're all just like this band of creative cats that are just trying to make something cool. The idea that the world would respond to the extent that they did was pretty exciting and also surprising to be in all of the conversations all at once. Because at the end of the day, we were still performing for 1,400 people a night, and it was still something that was just happening in our building. The fact that it's 10 years on and now and it's still moving people still responding to it, the show's still sold out.
And I mean, like, originating a role seems like such an exciting creative challenge. Like, how did you find the character? Do you remember how you kind of prepped this version of George Washington?
I had so much source material, none better than Ron Chernow's biography of Washington. I mean, it won a Pulitzer. I made the argument early on that it could have easily have been called Washington and not Hamilton, but whatever. Lynn wasn't super responsive to that. There were so many things that people felt about him, and that this mythology that follows the founding fathers around, there's so many holes in it. So it was nice to be able to dig and to really learn about the times and how all of these different people just shaped the things that they were trying to do.
I actually went to the George Washington University, so I have a spot for George Washington. He's, of course,
right on.
Did you feel any pressure to present George Washington in a certain way?
Not from like a zeitgeist, historical, societal kind of, presentation of it. As actors, we rarely have the challenge, I should say, is to humanize these folks, to make them, breathe and move and experience emotion and have disagreements and quite literally run into one another, in the hopes of allowing us to take these figures down from a pedestal and see them as real people.
How do you keep a role alive after the 1,000th performance? I've always wondered, do you get bored after a certain amount of runs? Do you like it even more because you found your stride?
you grow the muscles for the show that you're doing, which is, obviously something that happens after a lot of repetition. But I think so much is made of, well, it's the same show 8 times a week, but it's never the same audience. I often say, like, you're never the same person walking in the door. You've got a sore back. You've got a deadline for some other project. Doing the shows in repetition over a long run, it does present some challenges, but not from the standpoint of, like, I'm really bored. Because the whole basis of why we're on the stage is the opportunity to tell the story to someone who hasn't heard it yet.
And you got to step back into George Washington for one night just a few months ago at the Tonys. And how was that? Yeah. What was it like to embody this character again? Did you have to prep?
No, there's a lot to be found in muscle memory and the memory of where we spent so much time together as a cast that it was really exciting to kind of stand in those shoes again. All of our lives changed so completely. There's only a few other people in the world that had that experience.
Have like a favorite song or scene that you were most excited to perform again?
I mean, all of them. I'm not being coy. Like there's not a single moment in that show that isn't memorable for 1,000 different independent reasons. I get just as much enjoyment from doing a particular song as I get from watching Renee and Jasmine and Pippa sing any of the Schuyler sister stuff, or listen to Lynn or listen to Leslie, recite those opening bars. Like it doesn't get any better than that.
It is hard, but I will say one of my favorite parts is history has its eyes on you. I think that's like one of the most and especially right now, I still see posting that like on their Instagram stories because it resonates so much right now. How did being a part of this show change how you think of history and even politics?
I have always been fascinated with history. The Revolutionary Era was clearly messy and fraught and misguided in a lot of ways, which, when you're forming a country and forming America specifically, there's no question that there was a lot of things that they just simply got wrong. And the fact that we're here now, I think 250 years later, is a testament to the strength of the ideals that they tried to espouse, even though they were personally unable to do that, in their own lives.
Moving on to another iconic project that you have been a part of, we really wanted to get into in Just Like That, which is, of course, the Sex and the City that you're a part of. We're so curious. Can you tell us like the story about how you got this role? How were you approached?
Michael Patrick King called me and asked if I would be interested. Michael Patrick King is a genius. The man has created some of the most memorable television moments of my lifetime. I'd met Cynthia and I'd met Sarah before. I hadn't met Nicole Ari Parker. Our first day on set together was our first meeting. And here we are. We're a married couple. Everyone was so welcoming and enthusiastic and taking the job very, very seriously. And this is the show that's obviously been around for a very, very long time. It spans generations. I was in my 20s. I watched the show because I wanted girlfriends and I wanted to be able to relate to whatever girlfriend I had might be, interested in. They're like, and it's one of the most popular shows on TV, so as an actor, I wanted to be on the show. I think to have such an iconic show exist in the way that we knew it, go away, and then come back into this world that we're in post-COVID. That was like the jump back into the world.
Right.
There's a lot of things, these huge like societal swings that have happened. The show was trying to meet some of that. The show was trying to speak to some of that. The show was trying to take an honest look at what these particular characters had grown into and what they were still navigating. I think that there's nothing that's inherently interesting. And when he told me I was going to play a black, 100 millionaire, I'm like, yeah, I'll be down for that.
The Wexley family was such a breath of fresh air. Like Mabel and I both watched every episode of And Just Like That.
I love that the Wexleys they were doing very common things. They were extremely wealthy, living in a $50 million, penthouse apartment with their 3 kids. But like they were still, the kids were still a problem. The work-life balance is still an issue. We all have, there's a commonality in all of these things. But it was exciting to be able to portray a family that we hadn't seen yet on TV before.
And of course it ended like last week. How do you feel about the ending of the show and the way that your character kind of ended up?
The very personal experience of it all for me was incredibly fulfilling because going to work every day felt like I was doing something that was, the show has its silly moments, it has its more sincere moments, but every day at work was incredibly sincere. and everyone there was incredibly professional and very like working very hard to be at the very, very best and to support everybody else at their very best. So I'm not quite sure that I'm at the point yet where I can comment necessarily on the whys and the hows.
And so we won't know for sure what happens to these characters, but in your mind, what do you think is next for the Wexley fam? Do you think your character will run for another election?
You know what I think? I think we need to have a spinoff. I think we need a spinoff so that we can explore this family a little bit more. I think we should do anything that puts Nicole Ari Parker and those brilliant actors playing our family, and maybe me. I think we should set that up. I think in order to answer that question, we should absolutely just go ahead and line one up and just go.
Yes, you heard it here first.
That's it.
And we know that this isn't like your first TV show that you've done, but you've just been a part of like so many different things. Like you've done voice work for movies, you've been on Broadway, you've done TV shows. Do you have like a favorite? What is like the charm of one that maybe like supersedes the other?
That's a good question. Honestly, I'm not being coy. My favorite thing is the next thing I get to do. I fear staying in one place too long. I just like variety. I'm an artist. I like being able to, I like different sounds. And you can tell I'm in my studio right now. Like I look at I don't collect guitars for the sake of collecting them. Each one is a paintbrush. Obviously I love the stage. It's so informative and being able to connect to audiences again in real time. But I would not be mad at jumping on a TV show tomorrow.
And so let's talk about Hell's Kitchen.
Okay.
Your first time back on Broadway since Hamilton. And we know Hell's Kitchen is getting rave reviews. So for those of us who haven't seen it, those of our audience listening, what is so special about the show?
Well, I mean, it's a New York-based show, a few blocks from where the theater is on 44th Street. And it's a story with Alicia Keys music. It's a story about an enduring relationship between a mom and her daughter, and how the forces of growing up and the pull of love, young love, and the enthusiasm and the stubbornness of that teenager, how it intersects with like learning what things in life are the most important.
And what has been so fulfilling or like challenging for you about playing Davis, like your character in this show?
Bit biographical. My dad was kind of a Davis, enters the room smiling. Everyone loves him coming in, kind of didn't like him going out. I think and he's an artist.
You mentioned with And Just Like That and this show that they're kind of love letters to New York, and you've happened to be in some of like In the Heights and Hamilton, obviously, such quintessential New York shows and content. And we understand you're actually from Illinois, which I love. I'm from Wisconsin, so
right on Midwest.
We have the Midwest.
Yeah.
But how has being a part of these like very New York shows deepened your appreciation for the city?
I couldn't have gone anywhere else in the world and been able to do what I've done. I always say like New York embraced me the moment I came here, much like it does millions of other people. It's a testament to the fact that everybody in New York is an immigrant. Everybody here is from somewhere else.
Yeah.
The idea that, New York embraces you once you embrace it.
We did want to end on asking, because we heard that you're working on some solo projects. So we just wanted to ask you if you were willing to share.
I am. I'm doing, I've finished an album. And now we're into the fun part of deconstructing it and putting it back together. I've just received a commission from the Chautauqua Theater to write music and lyrics to adapt a young adult novel called The Crossover, written by Kwame Alexander. So that is exciting. I'm hard at it with all of those things up until 4:30 every day, and that's when I have to go to work.
Thanks for tuning in. Don't forget to like and subscribe.
Next week, we're looking into why AI is causing droughts in some parts of the country.
Bye.